Let us go back 300 years to London's Samuel Pepys. In his famous diary, we read of a catastrophe that was typical of that and of the preceding ages. An epidemic of the plague that had been raging in Europe took a fearful toll of life in England's capital in 1665. Hundreds fell ill every day. Many have died in short order. People were stricken on the streets. Everyone fled from the victims for fear of the dread disease. But by far the most horrible element of the tragedy was the mystery of its origin. No one knew what or who carried the plague. The solution came by way of contraption. Anyone know what this is? No, it isn't a can opener. It's the first microscope. It may look like a toy to us, but its importance to human life is tremendous. It's the connecting link between our science of modern medicine and the distant past. In 1683, not very Leeuwenhoek found a lens superior to any magnifying glass of that day. This Dutch naturalist set this lens into a crude frame and thus constructed this first microscope. He examined drinking water. Imagine the astonishment of his friends when he showed animals swimming about of the teeth and found living beings too small to be seen with the naked eye. This was man's first glimpse into the world of germs with which he comes in contact. In the following century, many scientists studied germs. In 1762, Prenthes, the Viennese doctor, contended that many diseases were caused by living organisms invisible to the human eye. But no one wanted to hear about the visions of a dreamer. The medical men of the time demanded facts, and Prenthes had no proof. Science was still waiting for the great genius of the microscope. It took 100 years to find him, but when he came, he revolutionized the entire field of medicine. Since 1860, all advances in work with germs have been based on the fundamental experiments of Louis Pasteur. This great Frenchman established that germs did not come to life by themselves. By an ingenious test, he proved that germs would not develop in a germ-free flask unless they were carried there by some outside agencies, such as dust particles. He used the microscope to help the great wine industry of France. He recognized the fact that yeast cells caused fermentation, but that very often other organisms ruined the beverages. Pasteur experimented and found he could kill the harmful organisms with heat. This was the first of the methods discovered for killing germs. It is possible to demonstrate this method by placing an active culture of bacteria under the microscope, applying heat, and then observing the germs forming in clusters as they die. The use of heat to kill germs, as in pasteurization, is today vital in safeguarding many of our foods, particularly milk. Disease germs, if present, are eliminated by passing the milk over heated coils so that when it is finally served, it shall contain nothing but the nourishing qualities that ensure good health. In England, Dr. Lister, who had been carefully studying the work of Pasteur, conceived the idea that germs might be responsible for the pus infection of wounds. In those days, a surgical operation was a gamble with death from blood poisoning. Lister found that he could avert this by killing the germs in and around the wound. He sprayed everything with carbolic acid and bathed his with the same chemical solution. He destroyed the germs with chemicals just as Pasteur had done with heat. This was the second of the methods discovered for killing germs. The modern antiseptic and aseptic methods of surgery are the outgrowth of Lister's early experiments. Throughout France, sheep were dying in large numbers of the disease known as anthrax. The great Pasteur found that germs were responsible for this scourge. He prepared a vaccine that enabled farmers to protect their sheep and cattle from anthrax. Thus Pasteur discovered the third method of combating germs, that is, by strengthening the defense forces of the body through the use of vaccines and antitoxins. It was by means of this third method that he achieved the crowning glory of his brilliant career, the successful fight against rabies, or hydrophobia. This humble chemist became the founder of modern scientific medicine and one of the greatest benefactors of the human race. Pasteur successfully fixed the position of the microscope in scientific medical investigation. In the next 50 years, more progress was made in medicine than in the previous 2,000 years. It is hard to believe that as late as 1832, New York was at the almost complete mercy of many infectious diseases such as cholera, diphtheria, and smallpox, although vaccination then as now would have wiped out this last disease. The New York Post of June 16, 1832, carried the story of an epidemic of Asiatic cholera that had broken out in Canada. It was feared that the disease would reach New York shortly and that nothing could be done to stop it. The epidemic did arrive and later spread its fearful hand over Europe as well. Not until 1883 did Robert Koch discover the germ that caused cholera. In the preceding year, Koch had found the germ responsible for tuberculosis. Later, the typhoid germ was revealed by two German scientists, Dr. Eberth and Dr. Gefke, and in 1883, Dr. Krebs discovered the germ that caused diphtheria. But the real fight against the merciless diphtheria germ was yet to be won. On Christmas Eve, 1891, in the von Bergmann Hospital in Berlin, a little girl was fighting for her life against this murderous disease. One ray of hope lay in the skill and genius of Dr. von Behring, a former military surgeon who had been making remarkable experiments under Dr. Koch. He had successfully cured diphtheria in animals by means of an antitoxin. With the courage and daring, it was now ready to take the eventful step from the laboratory to the sickbed. He brought his wonderful serum to the aid of the stricken child. In a minute, the painless injection had been completed. The contribution von Behring made to humanity that Christmas Eve will remain an everlasting symbol of his goodwill to men. Once again, man had conquered germs by the third method of combat, that of helping the body in its fight against the agents of disease. Von Behring's achievement was great, but he saw that it would be far more wonderful to prevent the disease than to cure it. This ideal has now been achieved, and today we have toxin antitoxin or toxoid, with which we are able to protect our children against diphtheria. Not all germs disclosed by the modern microscope are injurious to man. Some, in fact, are essential to his very life. Many live in the soil and make it possible for us to grow the fruits, grains, and other plant products so necessary for the existence of animals and mankind. But the injurious germs, and indeed the causes of those diseases not due to germs, must be discovered, controlled, and if possible, destroyed. The causes of many diseases have come to be known in the last 50 years, but there are others that still elude the searching eye of modern science. The cause and cure for infantile paralysis, rheumatic fever, and cancer are among the baffling mysteries yet to be solved. But there is every reason to believe that the scientists will be successful in the future. Year after year they struggle unrelentingly, sometimes sacrificing their own lives to find new ways of controlling disease. They are fighting the battle of man against microbes so that we, unhampered by the scourge of sickness, may achieve fullness of life and happiness.